Food poisoning is more dangerous after 60, and these foods deserve extra caution. If you're over 60, your body may not respond to food poisoning the same way it did decades ago. Symptoms can become more severe, and recovery often takes longer. That's why today's topic isn't about fear. It's about making smarter choices with the leftovers already sitting in your refrigerator. Point 1. Fish and shellfish spoil faster than many other cooked foods. Even if they still smell normal, harmful bacteria may already be multiplying if they weren't refrigerated properly. Reheat seafood only if it has been stored correctly in the refrigerator, and eat leftovers within 1 to 2 days. When in doubt, don't take the risk. Point 2. Cooked rice is another food that requires extra attention. The danger doesn't come from reheating itself, but from leaving cooked rice at room temperature for too long. Rice can contain spores of Bacillus cereus, a bacterium that survives cooking. If the rice isn't refrigerated within 2 hours, those spores can grow and produce toxins. That reheating may not destroy cool rice quickly. Refrigerate it promptly and reheat it until it's steaming hot, only once whenever possible. Point 3. Chicken is perfectly safe to reheat if it has been stored correctly, however. Large pieces often heat unevenly, especially in a microwave. Cool spots may allow harmful bacteria to survive. Cut larger portions into smaller pieces before reheating. Stir if possible, and make sure every bite is piping hot. If cooked chicken has been left on the counter for more than 2 hours, it's safest to throw it away. Point 4. Cooked eggs should also be handled with care, whether they're scrambled, boiled, poached, or part of a casserole. Egg dishes should be refrigerated within 2 hours after cooking. When reheating, heat the entire dish thoroughly. Never rely on appearance alone, because harmful bacteria can't always be seen or smelled. Point 5. Potatoes often appear on lists of foods that should never be reheated, but that's not entirely accurate. The real issue is how they're stored after cooking. If cooked potatoes are left at room temperature for several hours, especially wrapped tightly in aluminum foil, they can support the growth of harmful bacteria. Refrigerate potatoes soon after they've cooled slightly, and reheat them until they're steaming throughout. If they've been sitting on the counter overnight, don't risk eating them. Point 6. Spinach is another food surrounded by myths. You may have heard that reheating spinach creates dangerous chemicals, but current medical guidance says properly stored spinach is generally safe to reheat. The greater concern is allowing cooked spinach to remain at room temperature for too long. Refrigerate leftovers promptly. Reheat them only once if possible, and discard spinach that has become slimy, discolored, or has an unusual odor. Point 7. Soups and stews can become unsafe when they cool too slowly. A large pot may stay warm in the center for hours, creating an ideal environment for bacteria to multiply. Instead of placing a huge pot directly into the refrigerator, divide the soup into smaller, shallow containers so it cools more quickly when reheating. Bring soups to a full boil and stir well to ensure every part reaches a safe temperature. Point 8. Ground beef deserves extra caution because bacteria can be mixed throughout the meat during processing, unlike a steak, where bacteria usually stay on the surface. Ground beef needs to be heated evenly all the way through. Refrigerate leftovers promptly. Reheat until piping hot, and never eat ground beef that has been sitting out for several hours, even if it still smells normal. Point 9. Pizza is one of the world's favorite leftovers, but only if it has been stored safely. Pizza left on the kitchen counter overnight can become a breeding ground for harmful bacteria, particularly because it often contains cheese and meat toppings. Refrigerate leftover pizza within 2 hours, and reheat every slice until it's hot throughout. If you're unsure how long it's sat out, it's safer to throw it away than risk food poisoning. Point 10. Cooked mushrooms can be safely reheated when they've been refrigerated promptly after cooking. Because mushrooms contain a high amount of moisture, they can spoil relatively quickly if left at room temperature. Before reheating, check for any slimy texture, sour smell, or unusual appearance. If anything seems off, discard them instead of trying to salvage the leftovers. Point 11. Cooked pasta is generally safe to reheat, but the sauce deserves special attention. Cream-based sauces, seafood sauces, and meat sauces spoil faster than plain pasta store. Leftovers in the refrigerator as soon as possible and reheat until the entire dish is steaming hot. Avoid reheating the same pasta repeatedly over several days. Point 12. Processed meats such as ham, bacon, hot dogs, and sausages can all be reheated safely if they've been refrigerated correctly, however. These foods are also high in sodium and preservatives, so they should be eaten in moderation, especially by older adults with high blood pressure or heart disease. Heat them thoroughly before serving and avoid leaving them at room temperature for extended periods. Point 13. Casseroles often contain a mixture of meat, dairy, vegetables, and starches, making them more difficult to heat evenly. Cover the dish while reheating to trap heat, and stir whenever possible so the center becomes just as hot as the edges. A casserole that's only warm in the middle may still contain harmful bacteria. Point 14. Cooked vegetables, including carrots, broccoli, green beans, and peas, are usually safe to reheat. The important step is refrigerating them within 2 hours after cooking and reheating them only until they're thoroughly hot. If vegetables develop mold, slime, or an unpleasant smell, they should be discarded immediately rather than reheated. Point 15. Perhaps the most important food isn't a specific food at all. It's leftovers in general. Most cooked foods should be refrigerated within 2 hours, eaten within 3 to 4 days, and reheated only once whenever practical. If a leftover has been sitting out too long, or you're unsure how it was stored, remember the simplest food safety rule when in doubt. Throw it out for older adults. Preventing food poisoning is always the safer choice. Point 16. Cooked beans and lentils are packed with fiber, protein, vitamins, and minerals, making them an excellent choice for older adults. However, like any cooked food, they need to be stored properly after the meal is over. Leaving bean dishes at room temperature for several hours gives bacteria an opportunity to multiply, especially during warm weather. Once the meal has cooled slightly, transfer leftovers into shallow containers and refrigerate them within 2 hours. When you're ready to eat them again, reheat only the amount you plan to serve and make sure it becomes steaming hot all the way through. If the beans have developed an unusual smell, bubbles, mold, or an unexpected sour taste, discard them immediately instead of trying to reheat them. Point 17. Cream-based dishes require extra caution because dairy products can spoil more quickly than many other ingredients. Meals such as creamy soups, Alfredo pasta, chowders, casseroles, and cream sauces should never remain on the table for hours after dinner. Refrigerate them promptly in small containers so they cool more quickly. When reheating, stir frequently to distribute the heat evenly, since thick sauces often become hot around the edges while remaining cool in the center. If a cream-based dish has separated, developed a sour odor, changed color, or has been stored for longer than 3 to 4 days, it's much safer to throw it away for seniors. Replacing one meal is far less costly than recovering from severe food poisoning